Thunder Bay. The former head of the body overseeing the Thunder Bay Police Service says it's on the brink of collapse, over alleged leadership failures she has outlined in a bombshell open letter. Georgianne Morisseau, a current member and former chair of the Thunder Bay Police Services Board, notably claimed police leadership has overseen improper investigations meant to intimidate staff who challenge the status quo and report varying degrees of misconduct, some of which is potentially criminal. In a statement issued Monday, she promised to discuss the allegations, including details of her own human rights complaint against police leadership, in a media conference later this week. She vowed to speak up despite what she called efforts to silence her. Morisseau added she'll seek a meeting with Thunder Bay's City Council to report to them personally my experiences on the board as a city-appointed TBPSB member. She also appealed to Ontario's Attorney General and Solicitor General to do their due diligence in regards to the information that has already been forwarded to them and that they've so far ignored. The Police Services Board addressed the letter in a statement issued late Monday. The board, with the exception of member Morisseau, is united, working well, and far from collapse, said board chair and city councillor Kristen Oliver. The board reiterated it will not address specific allegations included in multiple complaints filed against police leadership with the Ontario Human Rights Commission by police officers and others, including Morisseau. The former Fort William First Nation chief joined the Police Services Board in 2019, expressing optimism she could help move the service forward after investigations concluding it was beset by poor governance, flawed death investigations, and a culture of systemic racism against Indigenous people. It is clear now, after having served as chair of the board for 12 months, and then serving as a city-appointed member, that the current leadership is not serious about change and in fact have no interest in improving the culture of the Thunder Bay Police Service, she wrote in her letter. The force has failed to address governance problems flagged in reports by the Office of the Independent Police Review Director, OIPRD, and Ontario Civilian Police Commission, OCPC, she said. The Police Services Board said an update on work to meet the OIPRD recommendations would be presented at a board meeting Tuesday. Regular updates are provided on progress made on this and other files mentioned in Ms. Morisseau's letter, as we work through implementing recommendations and taking other required steps, Oliver said. Morisseau's letter also pointed to an internal survey showing dissatisfaction among rank-and-file officers. The attention on the police force comes as it seeks a commitment for a $56 million new headquarters in the city's 2022 budget, along with a significant budget increase. In advance of the upcoming budget, it is especially critical that the public and the City Council are adequately informed about the state of the police service and the severe lack of oversight, Morisseau wrote. It was revealed in October that Morisseau had filed a human rights complaint against members of the Police Services Board and police leadership, alleging harassment and discrimination. She's one of 8 people to file human rights complaints against police leadership in recent months, represented by local lawyer Chantel Bryson. 2 of the complaints are now in process before the province's Human Rights Tribunal, Morisseau said. TB Newswatch has reached out to the Thunder Bay Police Service and Mayor Bill Morrow, who also sits on the Police Services Board, for comment. The full text of Morisseau's letter is included below. This article has been updated to include comment from the Thunder Bay Police Services Board. Georgianne Morisseau's open letter to the citizens of Thunder Bay and our valued treaty partners. I'm writing today to make my first public statement in regards to my formal HRTO complaint against the members of the Thunder Bay Police Services Board, the Chief of Police at the Thunder Bay Police Service as well as senior management there. Many of you may have read the article in the Globe and Mail, October 25, 2021, that generally outlined the story and the complaints. Since this story was shared, more details have come to light and I'm releasing this statement today to speak on a few critical issues that are in the public interest. I feel it is necessary to be very clear and concise here. Serving on the TBPS board has always been about answering the call for change and contributing to the greater good of the TBPS and the community and Thunder Bay at large. This was my intention in accepting my appointment by Thunder Bay City Council to the TBPS board in February 2019. I believed that I could positively contribute to helping change the culture on the board and help to create the environment for positive change within the service. It is clear now, after having served as chair of the board for 12 months, and then serving as a city-appointed member, based on what I've witnessed and experienced is nothing short of appalling and disheartening. It is clear that the current leadership is not serious about change and in fact have no interest in improving the culture of the Thunder Bay Police Service. I regret to inform the public that despite my many efforts to work collaboratively with the members of the TBPSB and the Chief of Police, it is my belief we are at an impasse, as I refuse to breach my public oath and fiduciary duties. The public needs to know that the TBPSB and TBPS administration has brought the Thunder Bay Police Service to the brink of collapse. The following items are a few particularly troubling issues that highlight the critical state of the TBPS directly as a result of actions and inaction by the TBPSB, Chief of Police and Administration. In advance of the upcoming budget, it is especially critical that the public and the City Council are adequately informed about the state of the police service and the severe lack of oversight. It is in the public interest to know that the TBPSB has failed to put in place an effective governance structure to properly govern despite the community calls for action set out in the OCPC, Sinclair Report, OIPRD Broken Trust Report, McNeely Report, and recommendations. This is an OCPC and OIPRD report response failure. It is in the public interest to know that the TBPSB has failed to put in place the appropriate checks and balances required to properly, effectively, and efficiently manage public resources and hold itself and the service accountable. This is a TBPSB failure to uphold its fiduciary duty and therefore a breach of public trust. It is in the public interest to know that rather than allocate resources and funding appropriately, leadership at TBPS have spent an exorbitant amount of funding and resources on improper investigations. This is a mismanagement of public funds and resources. It also an abuse of power. It is in the public interest to know there is a growing number of TBPS members of service filing HRTO complaints against TBPS and TBPSB leadership. Currently, there are 8 filed complaints and 2 in process before the tribunal. This is completely unprecedented. It is in the public interest to know that there is an internal TBPS survey that points to shockingly low morale inside the service, directly attributing it to leadership and lack thereof. As leadership of the police service, we have failed the members of the service and the community miserably. It is in the public interest to know the TBPS leadership employs tactics of harassment and discrimination, particularly targeting members of the service who challenge status quo and report varying degrees of misconduct, some of which is potentially criminal. It is in the public interest to know leadership takes action against both active members of the service and those who are off on medical leave suffering from PTSD and specific mental health issues. These actions are the actions of a morally bankrupt leadership at the police service. To conclude, under the oversight of the TBPSB and under the command of Chief Hoth, it is business as usual. Despite the fact that I, along with many good members of the service, have informed them of these critical issues that they intentionally leverage public resources to dismiss and hide. Further and more importantly, the TBPSB and senior management operate and make decisions in an impenetrable bubble of absolute authority with an expectation of immunity. What is spoken about in public forums and displayed through photo ops, media releases and social media by TBPSB and TBPS senior management member does not accurately reflect what transpires behind closed doors. Instead, continuing to take active steps to knowingly dismiss and hide the crisis evolving and escalating within the service, which directly impacts the community at large on the taxpayer's dime. The TBPSB has failed to uphold its fiduciary duty and obligation to represent both the public and service's interests ethically. We must at all times lead by the highest example and uphold the law and operate with the highest standards when directing and holding the Chief of Police accountable. We must be impartial and unbiased in our decision-making. We must act in accordance with applicable laws relative to community safety. When we fail to uphold our public duties individually or collectively, we must be held accountable and be transparent with the outcome. Currently, we are operating without ethical leadership and absent of the basic fundamentals of integrity and leadership. I will continue to uphold my public oath and operate with integrity, honesty, accountability and transparency. I am accountable to the citizens of Thunder Bay and our treaty partners. I am committed to improving the quality of frontline service in the community and repairing public trust. I am committed and will continue to work towards systemic change and reform, creating an environment that empowers the members of the service and supports them in their capacity to serve our community with pride. Necessary systemic change and reform. Members of the Thunder Bay Police Service. I do not answer to the Chief of Police, and I am an equal voting member of the Thunder Bay Police Services Board. I will continue to provide public comments and updates in the future as required, as it is important to me that the public is aware and informed. It is my belief that the TBPSB members and senior management will continue their attempts to silence me and the officers whom have come forward public. This is a police service on the brink of collapse at the hands of its board, its leadership and its administration. I saw the 7 Youth Inquest as a window of opportunity for change inside the city. I saw the OIPRD's Broken Trust Report and the OCPC report by Murray Sinclair as a chance for change. Listening to the community, listening to officers, listening to members, and listening to myself, it is clear change has not come and change is not here. Today, I am calling on the Office of the Solicitor General and the OCPC to do their due diligence in regards to the information that has already been forwarded to them and that they've so far ignored. Today, I am calling on the Office of the Attorney General and the OIPRD to do their due diligence in regards to the information that has already been forwarded to them and that they've so far ignored. Today, I am requesting an in-person meeting with the Thunder Bay City Council to report to them personally my experiences on the board as a city-appointed TBPSB member. Thunder Bay. A man who has previously served 5 years for sexual assault charges and is now facing a new charge of sexual assault will be released under strict conditions once a suitable surety has been found. Gary Lamont, 60, appeared before Justice of the Peace Danette Ellard via video from the Thunder Bay District Jail for a bail hearing Tuesday afternoon. Justice Ellard granted the release with the condition of house arrest. An appropriate surety will need to be found and vetted by the court before he is released from custody. The surety and Lamont will also have to pledge $1,000 for bail. Other conditions include Lamont having no contact with the complainant, to not be within 50 meters of where the complainant is known to live, work, or be, to not possess any weapons, and to remain in his residence at all times unless accompanied by the surety. Lamont was charged with sexual assault on January 11, 2022 from an incident that took place between December 20, 2021 and January 7, 2022. Lamont has already served 5 years in custody after pleading guilty to 5 counts of sexual assault in 2016. The incidents took place between 1993 and 2007 and involved victims between the ages of 17 and 24 years old. A future court date of February 7 has been scheduled for Lamont's next appearance. Thunder Bay. Ontario Solicitor General has requested an investigation of Thunder Bay Police Service leadership by the province's police watchdog, the Ontario Civilian Police Commission, OCPC. A representative for Solicitor General Sylvia Jones confirmed to Dougal Media Monday that Jones had made the request. As allowed for under the Police Services Act, the Solicitor General has made a request to the Ontario Civilian Police Commission to investigate the Chief, Deputy Chief, as well as the administration of the Thunder Bay Police Service, said Press Secretary Stephen Warner in an email. The revelation comes after sitting member of the Thunder Bay Police Services Board George-Ann Morisseau and the Thunder Bay Police Association each called for independent investigations of police leadership in recent days. It is important to note that the Ministry of the Solicitor General does not have legislated authority to direct change or impose sanctions on boards or police services, Warner said. The Ontario Civilian Police Commission has certain authority in the Police Services Act available for intervention in relation to misconduct and the administration of the police service. The Solicitor General's office did not provide reasoning behind its request in its statement, but said it would not offer further comment at this time, as there are pending complaints before the Ontario Human Rights Tribunal and Ontario Civilian Police Commission. Local lawyer Chantel Bryson is representing several current and former police officers, Morisseau, and others in numerous human rights complaints against police leadership. This story was first reported by NetNewsLedger. Thunder Bay Police Services Board member Georgianne Morisseau says fellow board members named in her human rights complaints against police leadership must remove themselves from decision-making on the issue. Instead, an independent administrator should be appointed to direct the board's handling of the complaints, said Chantel Bryson, a Thunder Bay lawyer who represents Morisseau in 2 applications to the Human Rights Tribunal of Ontario. Morisseau has named all members of the board in one HRTO complaint, seeking damages. "We've been going through this repeatedly with the board since filing her complaints, that they're in conflict. They're personally named respondents with named damages amounts, they have financial interests in these matters," Bryson said. "The board does not agree, members are in conflict," said Secretary John Hannam, who also flatly denied claims by Bryson that the board has met to discuss the complaint without Morisseau's knowledge. It's the latest salvo in an internal crisis that has seen Ontario's Solicitor General call for an independent investigation of police leadership, including Chief Sylvie Hoth, after appeals from both Morisseau and the Thunder Bay Police Association, which represents rank-and-file officers. Bryson has filed 9 applications with the HRTO alleging discrimination by police leadership, 7 of which are on behalf of current and former police officers. She says she's been approached by many more, as well as civilian staff. Morisseau's original complaint alleged that an investigation launched against her by Police Chief Sylvie Hoth constituted harassment. It also alleged that remarks made to her by Police Board Chair Kristen Oliver and Secretary John Hannam constituted racial discrimination. Morisseau believes the TBPS investigation of her, which she says included production orders for her cell phone records, is part of a larger campaign of reprisals against police officers who have spoken out against misconduct. The investigation came about after an officer approached Morisseau with concerns about the conduct of a superior officer, she alleges in the HRTO complaint. Hannam declined to comment on the board's response to the request that an administrator be appointed to handle Morisseau's complaint. However, he rejected the notion board members have a conflict on the issue. "None have so far declared a conflict," he confirmed. In a January 25 email reviewed by TB Newswatch, Hannam advised Morisseau to consider whether or not she would declare a conflict of interest as the board prepared to discuss plans to retain legal counsel and discuss strategy in response to the HRTO applications. Hannam emphasized he had only recommended Morisseau consider the potential conflict, and had not advised her to declare a conflict. Asked if he had sent similar messages to board members named as respondents in the same complaint, from whom Morisseau has sought financial damages, Hannam said the situation was not the same. "I would say that the board does not agree with Ms. Bryson's views in this matter," he said. "The board members do not find themselves in conflict. The distinction, I guess, is that it is member Morisseau that has taken action against the other board members, and others, actions in which she seeks monetary redress for her allegations. And so the potential for her to be conflicted rests there." To Bryson, it's a cut-and-dried case of a conflict for all board members, as defined under Ontario's Municipal Conflict of Interest Act. This board, as personally named respondents, cannot be engaged in the hiring or instructing of legal counsel, either for themselves or for the board, Bryson said. An independent body needs to come in and deal with member Morisseau's complaints. Bryson has written Solicitor General Sylvia Jones to ask that she direct the Ontario Civilian Police Commission, OCPC, to appoint an administrator, for the limited purpose of handling Morisseau's complaint. In 2018, the OCPC appointed an administrator to act in place of the board for a year, removing all but one of its members, following an investigation led by Murray Sinclair that found the board had failed to exercise proper oversight. The Solicitor General's office has not yet responded to a request for comment from TB Newswatch. Morrisseau has reason to believe the board and police leadership have strategized about their response to her complaint without her knowledge and outside of duly constituted meetings, Bryson said. Part of member Morrisseau's reprisal complaint to the Human Rights Tribunal is that they were holding secret meetings from December 2020 forward, behind her back, Bryson said. We have a witness who told member Morrisseau there had been many board meetings in her absence, since December 2020. That is something that will be tested in adjudication before the Ontario Human Rights Tribunal. It's an allegation firmly denied by Hannam. I can be very clear, he said. At no time has the board met without informing and inviting Ms. Morrisseau to attend. Morrisseau's treatment is part of a larger pattern of quashing, rather than addressing, complaints of misconduct in the force, Bryson said. It's been suggested to member Morrisseau since she first raised her complaint to the board last February that she should resign, she said. Why should the victim of harassment and discrimination, as she's alleged, resign? There's no basis for that. A statement from board chair Oliver earlier this month that the board was united, with the exception of member Morrisseau, rankled Bryson. They say they're aligned. Everything's good except for member Morrisseau, she said. We haven't had any investigation of these complaints, there's been no investigation and no adjudication. So we find it extraordinary for the board to be coming out and supporting the leadership of the service, in face of multiple serious allegations of racial discrimination, mental health discrimination, as well as serious allegations of criminal investigations and cover-up. Thunder Bay. The Thunder Bay Police Service's second highest-ranking officer has been suspended pending an internal investigation. According to a release issued by the Thunder Bay Police Services Board, and Deputy Chief Ryan Hughes has been taken off duty, though no reason was given. The board can confirm that Deputy Chief Ryan Hughes has been suspended pending an internal investigation. The board cannot comment further at this time as this is a human resources matter and await the outcomes of the investigation, said Board Chair Kristen Oliver. This story was first reported by the Globe and Mail's Willow Fiddler. The Thunder Bay Police Service has again come under fire of late, and an investigation is expected to look into the service's leadership, as ordered by Solicitor General Sylvie Jones. Thunder Bay Police Services Board member Georgianne Morrisseau, a former chair of the organization, has accused at least one member and Police Chief Sylvie Hoth of racism. However, a source has told TB Newswatch, Hughes' suspension has nothing to do with the human rights complaints filed by Morrisseau and a number of other officers reported earlier this month. Thunder Bay. The Special Investigations Unit has been called upon to investigate the circumstances surrounding the death of a 20-year-old Indigenous man in the city of Thunder Bay that is also subject to a re-investigation as recommended by the Office of the Independent Police Review Director. The SU was contacted by the Office of the Chief Coroner on January 18, 2022 to launch an investigation into the 2015 death of Aaron Loon. The Office of the Chief Coroner is part of the Executive Governance Committee that is responsible for the re-investigation into 9 sudden deaths involving Indigenous people in the city of Thunder Bay. The re-investigations were part of Jerry McNeely's report Broken Trust: Indigenous People and the Thunder Bay Police Service that was released in 2018 and found systemic racism in the Thunder Bay Police Service at an institutional level. According to the report, the initial sudden death investigations conducted by the Thunder Bay Police Service were problematic, deficient, and inadequate. A report into the re-investigations is expected to be released later this spring after several delays due to the COVID-19 pandemic and the nature of the investigations. It may be delayed further in order to include the findings of the SU, which usually seeks to complete investigations within a 120-day timeline. According to the original OIPRD report, Loon's body was discovered on the morning of March 25, 2015 on a pathway near North Junit Park. First responders reported that it looked like he may have been in a fight. The coroner indicated that Loon had several abrasions on his body that could have been the result of a fall. Police canvassed the area for information and the scene was released later that day. The pathologist advised police that there were no signs of foul play or trauma and the cause of death was listed as hypothermia. An individual who was with Loon the night of March 24 called the Thunder Bay Police Service just before 11 p.m. indicating that Loon was intoxicated and yelling in Junot Park. The individual was interviewed by police in April 2015 and he described Loon as acting rowdy and running around the trail without a shirt. The individual also said he called police because Loon was out of control and then left the area with a friend. No alcohol was left with Loon and the individual said he did not believe Loon would have passed out. McNeely concluded the investigation by the Thunder Bay Police Service failed to have a complete understanding of how Loon sustained his injuries, did not properly process the scene, and failed to follow investigative leads. This is but one of a number of cases in which an Indigenous person was presumed by TBPS to have died suddenly as a result of hypothermia or drowning, McNeely wrote. In a number of these cases, police failed to recognize that findings of hypothermia or drowning did not relieve them of their obligation to determine the circumstances under which these individuals froze to death or drowned, including the role, if any, played by others in contributing to their deaths. The incident involving the individual contacting the police on the night of March 24 is included in the preliminary information presented in the Sioux media release, which was also highlighted in McNeely's report. Regarding the Loon investigation, it was deeply troubling that police were called by an individual at 10:53 p.m. on the evening. Mr. Loon was last seen alive, McNeely wrote. The individual stated that Mr. Loon was being left alone in Junot Park and that he was intoxicated and needed to be checked on. The investigative file contained no information as to how this call, if at all, was responded to. The Broken Trust report goes on to say that the Thunder Bay Police Service said at the time that the call was logged as being of a lower priority because it came through the main line and had limited details. It was felt that there was no indication of public safety issues or immediate danger to Mr. Loon. So the call went unanswered for some time, as priority calls kept coming in, McNeely wrote. At some point in the night, a cruiser drove by Junot Park and nobody was observed. This was reported back to dispatch and the car was cleared to leave. The OIPRD was advised that the police service has taken steps to address the inadequate response to the call from the night of March 24, leading to a change in policy as to how those calls are dealt with. The Sioux has assigned 2 investigators to the case. Anyone with information that could assist in this investigation is asked to contact the Sioux at 1-800-787-8529 or online at https://sioux.on.ca/n/appeals.php. The Sioux is called upon to investigate when an interaction involving police results in death, serious injury, the discharge of a firearm at a person, or allegations of sexual assault.